Okay, this morning we're going to move into the Bible, the Scriptures itself, as a historical record. In the study of history, and if you're a historian, your source material is important. Your history is only as good as the source you draw from. So that there we go. So the question is, does God view history as important? And I got some handouts here. Again, if I have enough, I think I might be short today. Does God view history as important? Is history important to God, or is it just an academic exercise for geeks like myself, or grown men who like to dress up in soldiers' uniforms and march around Greenfield Village and pretend they're in the Civil War? I believe that history is important to God, and it's an integral part of the Scriptures. And if you look through the Scriptures, when you find certain key phrases, you know that that passage has a historical context to it, such as forget not, lest thou forget, for a memorial, for a witness, remember, set up a pillar, they forgot, thou wast a stranger. The Lord's continually reminding the children of Israel that they were strangers in the land of Egypt. And in that context, they are to treat strangers in their own land as they would themselves have wanted to have been treated. The Lord is also continually reminding the children of Israel that he brought them out of the land of Egypt, and then also that he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So that whenever you encounter these phrases, these key words, and others in the Scriptures, you know that the passage has a historical context to it. It's not on. Okay. Did we have enough of those? Good. There we go. So, I again was told last week I talked too fast, so I've tried to come up with a compromise here, okay? I will try to slow down, but I've also created my handout where it's more of a fill-in-the-blank thing, so you should be able to fill in your answers and have enough time there to do that. So, I apologize. I'm a long-winded guy. All right, we're stuck. Well, I don't know what we got going on here. Was working a moment ago, right? There we go. First of all, God commands us to remember and to forget not. Deuteronomy 4:9, only take heed to thyself, and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life, but teach them to thy sons and thy sons' sons. Secondly, the natural man is inherently depraved and ruined by sin, and as such is prone to forget God. We know that to be true in our own lives. We go through those periods of time in our life where we forget God. I read an interesting commentary written by a guy by the name of Charnock called The Attributes and Characteristics of God. And in there he discusses something called practical atheism. Now, we may not say that we are atheists as a creed, but he says it's possible for believers to practice what he calls practical atheism. That is, when we sin, we forget God. We forget that God is there. We rationalize in our own mind that God is not watching us, so we prepare an excuse for ourselves so that we can, with supposedly not exactly a clear conscience, but we sin because we choose to forget God at that moment. And at that moment, we are atheistic in our point of view. And if you look into Deuteronomy 8, 9, and 10, and really most of Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, is the children of Israel preparing to go into the land of promise. And there are continual recountings of the history of God's dealing with Israel up to that point. The new generation is being reminded of all the great, wonderful things that the Lord has done for the nation of Israel. He reminds them of how he brought them out of the bondage in Egypt, how he destroyed the Egyptians, how he destroyed the Amalekites, how he destroyed all the other people, and was going to cast them out of the land for them to go in. Forgetting God's greatness and providential care leads to sin. Judges 3:7, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgat the Lord their God, and served Baalim and the groves. Judges 8:33 and 34, and it came to pass, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again and went a-whoring after Baalim, and made Baal-berith their god. And we know that this is the continual pattern in Judges. Whenever a delivering judge works a great deliverance on behalf of the children of Israel, as long as that judge remains alive, the people follow the Lord. But as soon as that judge passes away, the children of Israel again revert to their sinful ways. Forgetting God's greatness and providential care leads to ingratitude. First, towards God himself. 1 Samuel 10:19, ye have this day rejected your God, who himself saved you out of all your adversaries and your tribulations, and ye have said unto him, nay, but set a king over us. Isaiah 1:2, I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. Judges 10:13, did not I deliver you from the Egyptians and from the Amorites? Yet ye have forsaken me and served other gods, wherewith I will deliver you no more. Secondly, it leads to ingratitude towards God's servants. Exodus 16:13. Remember the context here. Korah and his band are rising up and rebelling against Moses. And they say to Moses, is it a small thing that thou hast brought us out of a land that floweth with milk and honey, to kill us in the wilderness, except thou make thyself altogether a prince over us? And in Judges 8:35, neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had showed unto Israel. After Gideon had died, they turned again to their idols, and they were really ungrateful towards the family of Gideon. Secondly, God delegates responsibility for teaching of his greatness to the fathers. That's our responsibility as fathers in our families, to continually remind our kids of God's goodness to us as a nation, as a body of believers, even as a family, the good things the Lord does for us in our families. They need to be things that we're always putting before the face of our kids, so that they remember that we are what we are because of God's goodness to us. Exodus 10:2, and that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's sons what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know how that I am the Lord. And also, God has instituted various object lessons for purposes of historical instruction. Exodus 16:32, the Lord is feeding the children with manna, and he instructs Moses here. He says, Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord commandeth, fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. So there was a continual reminder of God's provision for the children of Israel when they are wandering in the wilderness. And then Numbers 15:38-40, speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put the fringe of the borders a riband of blue. And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, and that ye seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which ye used to go a-whoring. That ye may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy unto your God. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, to be your God. I am the Lord your God. So there again, that phrase we mentioned early on, I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. The historical context, again, is continually being, or the children of Israel continually being reminded of that he was the Lord their God. If I understand the chronology correctly, in the book of Exodus, it's only a matter of 6 weeks or so before the people rise up against Moses under Korah. It's only been 6 weeks since they had this great deliverance from Egypt, 6 weeks since they had their backs against the Red Sea, and the armies of Pharaoh are marching after them with hundreds of chariots. It's only been 6 weeks since the Lord opened the seas and allowed them to pass through. And then they saw this great victory over the armies of Egypt, and the dead bodies of the soldiers in the Red Sea. But yet, how quickly we forget. It's just as part of the human nature as being depraved, ruined sinners that we are. Also, God had required and allowed pillars to be used as monuments to commemorate special events. When you think of history, history is more of I like to think of history as collective memory. It's either the collective memory of the human race as a whole, or a collective memory of societies, cultures, nations, families. These monuments that are erected allow us to think and to remember the things that are done on behalf of our group as a whole, and they often will evoke certain memories, certain emotions, and that sort of thing. We have a lot of these around us. This one's over in St. Louis, a monument to those who died in the Civil War. And when you see this, I mean, obviously your memory immediately goes back to the sacrifice that was made during that period of time. This one's over in Hemlock, sort of a memorial to those who have given their lives for the country. Just over here in the new Edenville Township Cemetery, this young fellow. I saw this when I was on surveillance, not far from you guys, Doug and Peggy. I spotted that, and I thought, I got to go and see this one. And it makes you grateful for the sacrifice that these young are willing to make for us. And then the most sacred acreage in our country, Arlington National Cemetery, full of monuments. And when you see these monuments, you are reminded of the sacrifice that we as a nation, that these folks made for us to maintain our freedoms. It's ironic, and I don't know if you know the history of Arlington National Cemetery, but it actually is on the grounds of the estate that Robert E. Lee used to own. And they began to bury the Union soldiers in his front yard, basically to remind him of what his rebellion had cost the nation. And I think as families, it is good to have memorials and monuments too. In our family, we have some. You know, we are a family that consists of 3 adopted children. And for us, this is a real big thing. So our kids are lucky in that they have 2 special days every year. They have their birthday, and then we celebrate Adoption Day for them. And we've got a book for each one of the kids. We go through the book, and it's sort of a historical account of how the adoption went, how we came to the things the Lord did for us, and that sort of thing. And we try to really emphasize to the kids that you're in our family because of God's sovereign grace. And we emphasize that strongly, that God wanted you in our family, and we go over all of the special events that happen to make it a reality. So I'll give you a little peek into one of our books and let you see some of the stuff. We were at Calvary when we started the adoption process for Tim and Anna, so I don't know if you're familiar with all of the story, but, well, actually, let's start here first before we go there. In West Point, at the old Cadets Chapel, on the walls inside, you find all these plaques. Each one of these plaques commemorates a hero of the American Revolution. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Nathan Hale is in there, all of these folks. But of interest is this particular plaque. It has no name on it, only the rank and date of birth of a major general, and this is made to look like the name has been ground out. Anybody know who this plaque would refer to? Benedict Arnold. And this is there as a silent testimony to the cadets as they go through West Point, and it basically tells them that all of this, you know, if you recall the story of Benedict Arnold, he was a great general and he won many battles. He was the hero of the Battle of Saratoga. But yet, in one act of treacherous treason, you know, he wiped out all of his accomplishments. So this is an object lesson to cadets that you may have a life of distinction, but if you commit one dishonorable act, you know, it wipes you out as far as a place of honor in the American people. Now, our story for Tim and Anna, this is where they lived for like 18 months. Back in the hills of Haiti. It's about 8 miles back in from the coast. And I was sitting in my office when Mary got the phone call from her sister. They started yakking. I started hearing, I was kind of listening with one ear while working on a report with the other. And I started hearing talk about a little girl and adoption and all that stuff. I thought, uh-oh. And 2 weeks later, we learned that, Anna had been dropped off here. When she was dropped off at the mission house, she was close to death. She had not been fed for 10 days from the day of her birth. The females in her family, they said that they had a dream that Anna's mother was supposedly coming back from the grave and feeding Anna at night, so they didn't bother to feed her. And when and then Terry, our friend, heard of it, and he went to get her. And when they got her to the house, she was wearing a plaster cast on her head in the shape of a cone. She had red ribbons all over her hands. She had little cuts between her fingers, and she had a black substance of some kind shoved into every orifice of her body. She had been the victim of some sort of a spiritistic witchcraft ceremony, and the plaster cast on her head, they actually had to break it off with pliers and screwdrivers to get this thing off her head. And Connie told us that she was so small, she looked like a head stuck on the body of an insect. She was just so emaciated. These are the folks that they spent their first 18 months with. Terry on the left, Connie on the right, and their own adopted Haitian daughter, Sandrine. And this is sort of the region where they're from. I had to walk over several of these mountain ridges to get back to where Anna's family was from. This is Tim's birth father on the right, sitting in the chair in front of me to my left. And that's the hut where he was born. And that's his birth mom's grave. Anna's birth mom's grave with her family. The gal right there to my left would be Anna's direct aunt. And then this was a newsletter put out by the adoption agency, the First Contact. So it's a great thing for us to convey to the Lord what a wonderful thing this adoption process was, and the Lord was in this from the beginning to the end. The fellow that did the adoption, his name was John McCool. He's a white fellow from New England, but he's lived in Haiti for the last 40 years. And he used to always tell us, we would get impatient, let's hurry this process along. And he always would say, God is in the wait. God's timing is perfect. When things are ready, things will be done. And we met him one night in Port-au-Prince, and he decided he wanted to have an impromptu prayer meeting right in the middle of an ice cream shop there in Port-au-Prince. So we all started praying aloud, and all the Haitians are sitting around wondering what these goofy white guys are doing. But anyways, it's a monument for us as a family to God's goodness. I think we all should have monuments in our families. You may not have anything tangible, but in your mind you can look back in your life and you can think of things where the Lord has really worked a great work of grace in your life for you as a family or as an individual. And we need to remember these things because, again, we're depraved, ruined sinners saved by grace, and we tend to forget this stuff. And we need to keep it in front of our mind all the time. Genesis 28:18. And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillows and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. Exodus 24:4. And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up early in the morning and builded an altar under the hill and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And in Joshua 4:1-9, the children of Israel are crossing the Jordan into the promised land. Joshua 4:1-9. And it came to pass when all the people were clean passed over Jordan that the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe a man, and command ye them, saying, Take ye hence out of the midst of Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and ye shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place wherein ye shall lodge this night. And Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And Joshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of Jordan, and take ye up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask your fathers in time to come, What mean ye by these stones? Then ye shall answer them that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over Jordan, the waters of Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. And the children of Israel did so as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of Jordan, as the Lord spake unto Joshua. according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them unto the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests which bear the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there unto this day. Unto this day, of course, the day that the book was written. If I read this correctly, there are actually two pillars of stones. There's one on the shore, and there's one out in the middle of the river that Joshua set up, which are set up as a memorial of God's great deliverance. The Jordan River symbolizes death, passing from the world into the promised land. So it's set up as a reminder to those in the following generations when they ask, why are these stones here? It's a teaching moment. And you're always looking for teaching moments with your kids to instruct them with spiritual matters, and instruct them into the goodness of the Lord. Also, God has instituted ceremonies, rituals, feasts, and ordinances as memorials. In regard to the Passover, and this shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast for an ordinance forever. Exodus 13, 8 and 10. And thou shalt show thy son in that day, saying, this is done because of that which the Lord did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. And it shall be for a sign unto thee upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes, that the Lord's law may be in thy mouth, for with a strong hand hath the Lord brought thee out of Egypt. Thou shalt therefore keep this ordinance in his season from year to year. Luke 22:7. This is the one that's the most important to us. We're going to celebrate it today. The Lord instituted the memorial of the Lord's Supper. Now, this was a great issue for the Reformers as to what the meaning of the Lord's Supper was. The Roman Church believes that the Lord's Supper actually imparts grace in installments to you. You don't get the full measure of grace when you're saved, but as you partake of the sacraments and ordinances of the Catholic Church, grace is given to you in small bits and installments. And the Reformers believe that, at least many of the Reformers believe that the Lord's Supper was given to us strictly as a memorial and nothing more, for us to remember what the Lord did for us. And he took bread and gave thanks and brake it and gave unto them, saying, this is my body which is given for you. This do in remembrance of me. 1 Corinthians 11, 23 to 26, for I received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After the same manner also he took the cup, when he had supped, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye as oft as ye drink in remembrance of me. For as oft as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord's death till he come. I've often wondered why the cross has become the symbol of Christianity. Seems to me like the empty tomb should be the symbol of Christianity. The tomb is empty. There's nobody there. Because there's no tomb, there's no marker on earth for us to say, this is where the Lord died, this is where the Lord died. You can't take them to a specific place where the Lord's body lays. So he institutes this memorial service every year, in conjunction with the Passover period, to remember what the Lord did for us at Calvary. Psalms recount the history of God's care of the Jewish people. Now, I'll give you a few moments to write those down. I don't think did I put them on your list? Did I? Okay. Psalm 78. Let's go there real quick. I'm not going to go through all of them. Psalm 78 is the most comprehensive one, in which the history of the Jewish people is recounted. It's a rather lengthy one, but it starts here, give ear, O my people, to my law, incline your ear to the words of my mouth. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children. He goes down through the whole history here. Marvelous things did he in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt and in the field of Zoan. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand as a heap. As you go down through, the entire chapter is devoted to the history of God's dealing with the people of Israel. And the other ones also refer and make mention of the Lord's providential care over the Jewish people. The New Testament is based on the historical record of the Old Testament. Matthew 1, we see the genealogy of Jesus through Joseph. There's a historical context. Back in Genesis 3, the Lord promised that the seed of the woman would have his own heel bruised, but he would crush the head of the serpent. And this shows Christ going all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Now this was done, and then there are regular references to prophecies that were fulfilled. Now this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it was written by the prophet. And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people. And then further, the prophecy that Christ would be called out of Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken of by the prophet Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted because they are not. Then the prophecy regarding Christ being called a Nazarene. I need to move along here quickly. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, as it is written in the prophets, Behold, I shall send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare the way before thee, the prophecy regarding John the Baptist. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. And then he said to the Pharisees, Have you never read what David said when he had need and was an hungered, he and they that were with him, how that he went into the house of God in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and did eat of the showbread, which is not lawful to eat for the priest, and gave also them which were with him. Looks like I'm going to skip through some of these here real quick. Christ continually makes reference to the Old Testament. He validates the Old Testament as being a historical record. John 1:3, we see in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You see the same. It's a direct allusion to Genesis 1:1 in that in establishing the fact. And the theme of John is that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. And so they're making reference here to the fact that Christ was present at creation. And Christ says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Again, a historical reference back to the wanderings in the wilderness. And Jesus validates the historical record of the Old Testament by quoting directly from it or by referring to it. In his dealings with Satan, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. It is written again that thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him thou shalt serve only. And I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. And yet I say unto you that many shall come from the east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the historical context, in the kingdom of heaven. And verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. But as in the days of Noah were, this validates the fact that the flood did actually occur. Christ himself confirms it, as in the days of Noah were, so shall also be the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that they were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And then, have you never read what David did? Okay, we already saw that one. And then we also see the Old Testament events mentioned, New Testament evidence of God's judgment. Jude 5-7, I will therefore put you in remembrance, though you once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed them that believed not. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, a historical example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Woe Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the reward of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. Now I'll just finish with this one. Most of the apostolic sermons to the Jewish people particularly often begin with the history of the Jewish people and then lead into the sermon. Peter in Acts 2 and 3, Stephen in Acts 7, Paul in Acts 13, 14 to 41. So their sermons have the historical context of the Lord's dealing with the people of Israel. Finally, Old and New Testament accounts reveal previously unknown facts of history. In Isaiah 14, 12 to 15, we see the fall of Lucifer. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will sit also upon the mount of the sides of the earth. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. In Jude 9, we see this interesting account. And yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses. Durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuked thee. So we have a revelation of something that was not previously known, that there was this dispute between Michael the archangel and Satan over the body of Moses. Clearly, Satan wanted to use the body of Moses as a holy relic, I think, to be worshipped. Because we know later in, I don't remember, 2 Kings, I don't remember the exact location, but the serpent that was raised in the wilderness would eventually become an object of worship for the people and would be destroyed because of that. And in Job 1 and 2, we see the conversation between Satan and the Lord regarding the Lord's servant Job. We know that we see in our context, we see the struggle that's going on behind the scenes that Job doesn't see. He doesn't see that this is a contest between, or a test, really, of God's servant